The Kent Lapp Podcast.
All right, so you have 3 siblings.
Mhm.
Your sister's younger,
Yes.
and then the other brothers.
Yes.
Are they older, or where?
Yeah, so I'm the oldest.
Okay.
My sister's third in line.
Okay.
And the other 2 just fill in with brothers.
Okay. So you were the oldest son
Yes.
in a family where your dad molested your sister.
Yes.
And you didn't know about this growing up?
No.
And what age were you when you found out about this?
So you found out about how much of it, when I was 18, I heard a version of the story. And I think I was, 2012, if I can base it on that. That's 28 when I heard the truth of what actually happened.
Okay. Do you have thoughts of killing your dad, making an accident happen? I mean, this must be.
Yeah.
I guess I want to say, how do you come back from something like this?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can understand the pressure that you're in. You're the oldest son.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awful. I mean, it's awful. It's the most awful for your sister, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's one of those sins that, oh man, I just, there's so many other sins where, they confess and things, and you can just be so forgiving and understanding. But man, this is one where I don't care what you say.
Well, it definitely pushes what is our actual understanding of grace and forgiveness.
It must.
It has to, because forgiveness doesn't just mean that things go back to normal. There has to be, in certain cases, a new normal.
Mm-hmm.
I may not. So the place I am now is I don't think my dad is repentant, which is messy because he quit doing his molestation without anyone telling him to. And he apologized and then just tried to move on.
When you were 28, he apologized?
No, he did this before, I probably would have been roughly 16, because that's when the abuse was happening, when I was about 16. And maybe 17. I'm a little off, maybe. But anyway, and then when I'm 18, I hear a version of the story, which was a very minimized set of lies that contained a little truth. But, he's never going to be alone with our daughter, ever. That's not forgiveness. That's not grace.
Yeah.
That would be negligent and trying to take the easy way out and not actually dealing with the emotions necessary to be honest about the situation.
Okay. And if you have sons one day, same.
Same. Yeah,
any of your kids, he's still your dad, but he will not be alone with any of your kids.
And actually, I have not spoken to him in over 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Well, there was 2 phone calls. I've not seen him in over 5 years.
Okay.
I don't think I've spoken to him.
Can you just grab Rachel some more water, please?
Maybe 3 or 4 years since I last talked to him.
Okay.
Yeah. So, because there's boundaries, because I don't see true repentance.
Okay.
Every time he talked about the sin, he would either minimize or blame shift. Every time. He would say the right thing. He's a trained biblical counselor. He would say, I was wrong for, and he would state what he did. Will you please forgive me? And he would, or he would say for what I did or for my sin. And, well, that sounds really good, doesn't it? But he's a trained biblical counselor. He knows what he's supposed to say. He just wants things to get back to normal and not have to pay a price.
Mm-hmm.
So I eventually came to the place where if he had turned himself in, I could have trusted him with a relationship, because then he's willing to pay a penalty for what he did.
Mm-hmm.
And with a plea deal, he probably wouldn't have even gone to prison, honestly. We would have been fine with that. We're not pushing for him to, be raped in prison or anything like this. But, for everything you're talking about how hard it was really hard. That wasn't the hardest thing. The hardest thing was we tried to offer grace and he rejected it. We tried to put a hand out and say, we'll be willing to move past this if you deal with it directly, and he wouldn't.
Why wouldn't he? Because of the definition of dealing with this directly? The things that you asked of him to do as part of that he didn't want to do?
Back then, I didn't even do that. I hadn't even pushed that hard. It was really just be honest and stop blame shifting. Apparently, he was unhappy with his sex life with my mom. And his rationale was, well, if my wife doesn't know how to enjoy herself, at no point did he think he was part of the problem here. If my wife can't enjoy herself, then how can she teach my daughter how she should enjoy herself in her future marriage? So I'll teach her.
Oh, shit. Man, That's awful.
Yeah. So you can see pride and arrogance. Here's the thing. The molestation, that is a fruit. That's not even the root. It's the pride. It's the unwillingness. It was the, it's heavy. It was the unwillingness to admit his own, the core of his own evil, blame shifting onto my mom. There's like that's where this start. His domineering, like he needed to take control.
Yeah.
We haven't really been as public about the abuse he did to the rest of us. There's more
physical and verbal abuse and the whole deal.
Spiritual abuse. The way he worked us, I think, was actually evil.
Oh, really?
We built a 5,000 square foot home as a family.
Oh, wow.
And I was the oldest son. I was probably 11 years old, 11, 12 years old for most of this. And that was my entire life. It was my entire world. That's all I did. I was homeschooled, so it was part of my homeschooling.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So, just there's so many different layers to this. The physical abuse, so there was some of that. I still wake up screaming at night. I was starved as a kid at one point.
Really?
Yeah.
You'll wake up and have night terrors?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know how much till I got married, but yeah.
What do you think is happening?
I don't remember most of it. I don't know. Yeah. I have occasional memories of dreams and stuff, but most of it I don't remember. I actually, I was starved for a time as a punishment. If a man does not work, he shall not eat. I wasn't getting schoolwork done on time. So
oh, no.
I think I lost 20, I want to say like 28 pounds, 26 pounds. I could be a little off as a 13-year-old in a month.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an awful time to be starving a boy.
Yeah.
13 years old?
I was 13 years old. Yeah.
Wow.
And, to this day, like sometimes I have trouble sleeping and I'll go out and I'll eat a little something and then I can go to sleep. So really? I can't sleep unless I eat something. Because again, my body's just, there's like long-term stuff. So it's like the molestation was huge. Like that's the clear piece. And the fact he wouldn't deal directly with that meant we didn't even get into the rest.
I see.
So, but even then, the abuse was horrible. It was evil. But we loved our dad, and we still love our dad. And if he were to repent, it'd be a very slow process, but I would, by God's grace, be willing to rebuild. So again, very slowly, not a lot of trust. Too many things have been lied about to do it quickly, but he just like, he just makes himself the victim in his own mind.
So for vacation, he was or is a therapist, counselor?
So he's an engineer, but he did what's called nouthetic or biblical counseling.
Okay.
And so it's crazy. He's a very smart guy. His counsel has helped save marriages, probably helped ruin some marriages too. Like it's a mixed bag, but
he's still with your mom?
Well, my mom's still with him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a relationship with your mom?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And do you try to get her to leave your dad, or?
I never have. I told her that I would support her if she did.
Okay.
But I was like, that's a marriage covenant. That's not my call.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely harder to have a relationship with her as long as she's with him. Like a lot harder.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. The other siblings, like your other brothers, do they have any kind of contact with him?
One of my brothers hasn't had contact in years. The other one, so my youngest brother, and I don't want to tell too much of his story because it's his story, but he actually was probably the smartest of all of us, or at least intuitively, just did not trust my dad from age 5.
Really?
Like from a very young age. And so there was just a lot of hatred that he had towards my dad. He got saved as a teenager, and he really tried to, and so he's tried to, since becoming a Christian, kind of later than the rest of us, which is amazing that we're all believers. And still hold to the faith. But he has really tried to work on his own bitterness and anger.
Mm-hmm.
So from time to time he has reached out, but that's my read on that, best for what it's worth, is that that's more for him and dealing with his own heart
than
it is than it is anything else.
Any of your siblings have kids yet, or will your kid be the first?
No, I have one brother with kids.
Okay.
Yeah, he's got a couple of girls.
And have they met their grandfather?
Yes. They met him.
Okay.
Because, they were around just as things were coming apart.
Mm-hmm. And so, is it a correct assumption that you didn't report him to the police? I assume
we reported him to the police.
You did?
Yeah. So back in whatever year it was, 2003, maybe. Somehow I got to my pastor, what my dad had done, and my pastor called my dad and said, "Turn yourself in or I will." And for that many years ago, I actually think that's a fantastic response because there was so much
2003?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that my dad was an elder in the church too.
Oh, wow.
The temptation to try to hide it would have been so strong. And so I really do appreciate that pastor doing that. And that may have saved other people from being molested because once my dad had the spotlight on him, it would at least curtail behavior, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But at least it was the right thing for him to do. My sister, again, one of our interviews is with my sister, so this is all public. But she kind of lied to protect my dad when she was 11 or 12 and being questioned by investigators, which is a horrible place to be. Then later, she recognized that she lied and she went back and she corrected this story. And they asked her, "Do you want us to press charges or not?" And in her mind, the whole deal was, "I'm not his judge. You do what you do. I'm not taking responsibility for what happens to him." I don't know how they read that,
Right.
But they didn't press charges at that point.
Well, they couldn't, right?
They could have. Yeah, they could.
Are you sure?
They can still.
If someone who is assaulted like that does not press charges,
they can press charges up through. I don't think the statute of limitations is up for. It's either just ended or we have another year.
What I meant was if the person who is, say, perpetuated against doesn't press charges.
In the state of Indiana, they totally could have pressed charges.
You think they could? Okay,
they
gotcha.
told me they could.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So why do you think that the police department just has lots of things going on, and this was
What
years ago?
What they told us was that we'll put it in the file then, and if something else comes out, we'll hit them with both charges.
Yeah.
So again, I think it was more of they're busy, they've got a lot going on. It's a smaller county, they probably don't have a ton of resources, so they'll just if something else comes up, then they'll make sure they'll drop the hammer extra hard on him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang, man. It's amazing what humans can live through. I mean, that's hard, man. I cannot imagine, seriously.
Yeah. And I think when all this came to the surface, that's when I first moved to Virginia, I'm starting to recognize I probably shouldn't have been starved as a kid.
No.
That probably was wrong. And now I can go, oh, yeah, that was abusive. But I wasn't even there yet.
Yeah.
I can, just like, and there's many other things too, where just realizing I didn't have a good family.
Yeah.
And all these years, I thought my family was awesome.
Was this a big thing that you guys worked through when you were getting to know each other before you got married?
Yeah, for sure.
Did you work through it more before you got married or after you got married?
Both?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I'd say maybe more emotionally since we've gotten married, but theoretically, and, like Joe was already in a pretty good place when I met him.
Mm-hmm.
He had worked through a lot. And so we both had, and that was one of the things that drew us together was that we were processing that. We were not trying to ignore what we had been through and really face it. And so we did that together in our dating relationship and engagement. And then
even before we were dating, just as friends.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Just talking about both your upbringings. Processing.
Well, the fact that we met over her trauma with, an abusive ex.
Yeah.
It lended itself to those kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
And it went from there.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that like the direction from God in the Bible of husbands love your wives is like, that's not coincidental that's the thing for men. Like that's the instruction for the husband and dad is love. That's not coincidental.
No.
Because what's the instruction for for wives. It's not love, right? It's something.
Submit.
Okay.
Or you can even say honor. I think
Honor,
depending
yeah.
on where you're looking,
Yeah.
which verse you're talking about, but yeah.
Yeah, like I think in this conversation, like honor is probably because submit obviously is, we'd have to define that. But that's the thing, right? Like
loaded word.
It is a
Yeah.
loaded word. Yeah, and it
Yeah.
doesn't make it wrong. It's just back to context and definition and clarity and those types of things. But yeah, like that is that's the instruction to women is honor, and the instruction to men is love. It's striking to me that it's not necessarily love for both or honor for both.
Well, yeah, and of course, Rachel loves me, and I do honor her. Of
course.
of course. But there are things that I think do need to be emphasized.
Mm-hmm.
And men, Rachel's much more naturally loving than I am.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just feel her love like all the time. And actually, that's one of the things that amazed me when I married her. I was like, wow, she's really kind. I didn't know how much I needed that because I just hadn't really experienced it like that before.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, like this is healing me.
Yeah.
I never felt it like that before. And and yet there's things that she does that I just take as disrespectful. I'm like, oh my gosh, why'd you do that? And I'm like, babe, did you even think of this? And she's like, no. I'm like,
yeah, it didn't mean for it to come across
no
disrespectful.
intention.
Yeah.
Just like many of the things I say, there's no intention of me being unloving.
Yep.
And yet there it is.
Yep.
And I almost think that like if you have like that honor versus love kind of thing, they mostly overlap. It's just
Agreed.
what's the emphasis?
Yep.